We are talking cuts and possible trades for the Miami Dolphin players. This is going to be an interesting one because there's a lot of moves that could happen. What is up, Finn fans? We are going to be starting our free agency themed videos. So right now we're going to talk about possible Miami Dolphin players that might be cut or traded. I'm going to talk about possible players in another video that might be restructured or stuff like that. Tomorrow the franchise tag window opens. So I'm going to talk about tomorrow possible will Christian Wilkins get tagged? Will other players get tagged? We're also going to talk about who we should re-sign in another video, targets, so much. Because right now it is February 19th, happy President's Day. And we've got, next week, next Friday starts March. And on March 11th to the 13th is when the tampering period opens. So we're getting close to the opening of free agency. So we're going to start talking about all that good stuff. So before we jump into it, though, we're talking money. And I do have to shout out my guys at BetUS. They've been a very good sponsor of the channel, been helping us out a lot. And, go check them out. Click the link in the description. Use the promo code JOIN125 and you get 125% on your first 3 deposits. They also have 24/7 customer service, 24-hour payout. Absolute fantastic. Again, BetUS, thank you so much for sponsoring this video and for being a sponsor of the channel. So yeah, we're going to be talking free agency. Now, let's recap where we're sitting at right now. The Miami Dolphins are at negative $51 million in cap space. Now, that sucks. Now, there's a ton of teams that need help and are going to have to move things around in cap space hell. Buffalo Bills are another one of those teams, as well as a bunch of others. Now, something that has slipped my mind, and I've forgotten to tell you guys, is the cap space is going to go up. Every year it goes up depending on how the revenue does, how all these things do. Obviously, like the Amazon stuff and the Peacock stuff and all that stuff, revenue is going to go up. Last year, the cap space increased by $16.6 million. And this year, they're expecting the cap to increase by about $20 million. So that's going to take a big chunk out of that negative 51, probably have us sitting at around negative 31 million. So it does help that the cap is going up, and it's also going to go up huge next year, as a projection has around almost 50 million. Again, that's just a projection. We'll see. But again, this year, the salary cap is going to go up. It did last year, like I said, by I think it's like 9%, 6.9%, something like that, to $16.6 million increase. So the Dolphins still need to make some work and make some moves. And this is kind of the first stage in it. Now, if you guys remember back, when I was talking about the cap space, a lot of people were freaking out about it. And I kind of tried to tell you guys how they can get under the cap space. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth here with the cut trade options. Now, there are, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 possible cut trades and like 2 updates. I'm going to start with the one update, which I found interesting and I completely forgot about. If you guys remember last year, Cedric Wilson Jr. restructured his contract. So Miami lowered his base salary to $2 million, giving him a $3 million signing bonus to equal his $5 million guaranteed salary that year. But his contract will now void after 2023. So by restructuring his contract, they took off a year off his contract. So he's a free agent this year. I completely forgot about that, and I forgot to talk about that because Cedric Wilson, to me, was kind of one of those options at cutting, but also I really did like him as another option at the wide receiver spot because he did help us down the road when Waddle and Hill started to get banged up and weren't on the field as much. But he's a free agent. His contract was voided this year because if you go on Spot Track, you go on all these sites, he's not there because, like I said, possible free agent. So that's something I wanted to bring to your attention because I completely forgot about it. So if you didn't, good on you. Good eye, Captain. I completely missed on it. So we're going to start talking cut trade options. And I'm going to show you some of these cut trade options. So we're going to jump into this. Now, some of the names are obvious, right? Like Emanuel Ogbah. He seemed to be the odd man out there, right? He is due $17.7 million in cap space this year. If you see here, if the Dolphins move on from him, just like as soon as this new year starts on the 13th of March, they save $13.7 million. Or if they wait, it's $15.7 million. So it's $2 million savings, but you do have to wait to use the money till after June 1st, which after the draft and all that stuff. So he most likely will be a cut as soon as the new year starts, or maybe even before that, because some players are already starting to get re-signed, like Nelson Aguilar got re-signed to the Baltimore Ravens already, and some guys are already starting to get picked up and re-signed there. But I fully expect him to be a release, and if not a release, possibly restructured. But again, I'm going to do a video on who could be restructured. But you're not paying him $17.7 million. You're going to eat $4 million in dead cap, but that's a pretty big savings that the Dolphins can use right now. And unfortunately, he wasn't used well enough last year, especially when it came down the line when we were banged up at pass rusher. For some reason, Vic Fangio did not want to use him. But he's one of the candidates for a possible cut. Another one is Jerome Baker. He is due $14.8 million this year. Right here, his cap hit. And if they do decide to move on from him, it's a $9.9 million savings. Or if they wait till after June, it's $11.1 million savings with a dead cap in 2025 of 1.2 and a dead cap in 2024 of 3.7. Now, here's the thing about Jerome Baker. He might fit in the Dolphins scheme of what they're running right now. So again, I'm probably going to talk about him again when it comes to possible restructuring. But he is definitely a candidate because you cut him, that's $9.9 million. And you cut Ogbah, that's $13.7 million. You are saving 22 and some change. So I'm going to round it up to 22 million and change savings. So again, like I said, the cap is going to go up. So expect the Dolphins to be sitting at around -31 in cap hell. And if you cut those two guys alone, that's what did I say? 22 million, $23 million cap savings. You're right there. You're very close to the green, and that's only releasing two guys. And these are the big hitters that I'm talking about here, right? Like Jerome Baker and Emanuel Ogbah. Then you have the Xavien Howard situation. Now, Xavien Howard is due $25.9 million in a cap hit this year. Now, if they release him as soon as the new year starts, it's only a $2.8 million savings. If they wait until a post-June, regardless if it's a trade or not, so again, say they're like, oh, we found a trade partner, yada, yada, it's only $2.8 million savings. They are going to need to wait till June 1st because they save $18.5 million. If they decide to make him, and they'll probably designate it so he can go find a new team if they decide to do that. But if they do decide to do that, that $18.5 million would be huge for, post-draft stuff, for signing your draftees, signing the free agents that are still out there, some of the vets that kind of are waiting to see what happens after the draft. You have $18.5 million to play with. Now, again, he's going to be a guy I might talk about when it comes to restructuring situations. But again, look at his contract. He still has 3 years left on his contract, right? This is when the out starts. If, bigger savings, not as big in the post, but bigger in the first cut. And then you look at his last year, bigger savings. That number needs to be fixed. Now, I am and I was a huge Xavien Howard fan. I loved the way he played a few years ago, but again, that was a few years ago. He has not played to the caliber of a $25.9 million corner. So he would need to restructure that, and there's no way he's going to be like, yeah, I'll take less money, because they're not really going to put more years on his contract. So he seems like he's going to be a post-June 1st release, which kind of sucks because, Xavien Howard drafted here. He had some really great years. He led the league in interceptions, was just great for the Dolphins, and it's time to possibly move on from him. Another possible cut, and I don't know if everyone's going to agree with this one, Mike White. He's due 5.2 million. You cut him, you save 3.5 million. It's not as much as you would want to save, but I don't see him as a viable backup to Tua Tagovailoa. I'd like to bring in, every year I'm bringing in competition for everyone. So regardless if Tua gets signed or not, I want a better backup. God forbid something happens. I never felt good about Mike White being the backup. I remember when we signed him, I was not happy. I wanted Jerome Baker. I wanted Baker Mayfield. That would have never happened because look at what he did with Tampa, and he wanted to be a starter. I wanted Gardner Minshew. He actually came in and really did help the Colts. I wanted like a guy that, God forbid, Tua gets, can't play a game or two or whatever. We don't feel so like, ugh, because Mike White literally threw a pick six in a game where we let Tua sit and put Mike White in. And it's like, dude, we have such a lead. Like, what are you doing, man? So it's like, I don't feel comfortable. I'd like to save that $3.5 million. Now we start to get into some fishy things. And again, this video is cuts and possible trades. So Mike White is a guy that I could see being cut. Keon Crossan, you probably completely forgot he was on the team. At no point was his money guaranteed. They released him. They saved $3.2 million. His contract isn't guaranteed at all. There's no dead cap. To me, this is a move they need to make. It's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, but it is. Again, pennies. But especially when you're trying to, go after vets that can make an impact. Keon Crossan really not making an impact. Here's where things start to get a little controversial. Now, we have our running backs, and they're right next to each other when it comes to cap hits. You have Jeff Wilson at $3.7 million, and you have Raheem Mostert at $3.3 million. To me, Jeff Wilson didn't seem kind of happy with his role. If you guys remember, he was like a healthy scratch a few times, and he was kind of sitting on the sidelines. He wasn't happy. I would probably move on from Jeff Wilson if I could get a trade partner, if I could get somebody to give me a fifth for Jeff Wilson. Now, that's a stretch. I doubt anyone will give us a fifth, but if I could get a fifth, I would do it. But regardless, you save $3 million by moving on from him. So those last three guys you're moving on from, they're a bunch of guys, two guys, $3 million and some change, and him, you're looking at probably around $10 million in cap space savings. It goes towards a lot. It really does go towards a lot and would definitely help the team in the situation they're in. I love Jeff Wilson. If you watch the Cowboys game when he got the first downs that we needed to, I always thought he was that back that we needed in, those situations where he's a heavy runner. He just doesn't fit, it seems like. And, he always seems like the odd man out. Rarely gets reps and save you $3 million. And you can move on from him. Now, Raheem Mostert led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. What was he like? Top 10 rusher? Pro Bowler. If they move on from him, it's a $2.7 million savings. It is nothing. So to move on from him wouldn't necessarily be for cap savings. If the Dolphins were to move on from him, which I don't think they should, I think he should be part of a three-headed backfield with an addition that I will talk about when I talk about free agent targets. But he can't stay healthy. We needed him in certain situations, and he wasn't healthy enough. I'm not knocking him for it. Being a running back takes a toll on you. Devon Achane rarely got hurt in his college years, got hurt for us. It happens. Running backs take the brute force constantly. If you could get something like in the fourth, like a fourth rounder for the, again, he's up there. He's going to be 32. But if you can get up, fourth rounder for a guy who led the league in rushing touchdowns and had 21 all-purpose touchdowns, I'd pull the trigger on a fourth. We don't have a fourth. We have a first, a second, a fifth, a sixth, and I think 2 sevenths. If we can get a third or fourth somehow by moving, trading one of our people, I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat because he's not getting younger. And it's time to possibly add some guys that will help us down the end of the season. Again, not knocking Raheem, but when we needed him against the Ravens and kind of needed him against Buffalo, he wasn't there. So start to add those guys that, we could possibly use, possibly need. So, just talking off the cuts before I get into possible trades like I already did with Raheem Mostert. If the Dolphins were to move on from Ogbah, Howard, Baker, White, Wilson, Mostert, and Crossan, so they move on from 7. Now, we won't see Howard's money until post-June, which is an $18.5 million chunk that we can have for, again, draft picks, free agents that are still out there, emergency during the training camp period. Without his money, it's a $36 million savings. And like I said, they expect the cap space to go up by about 20 million. So we might be looking at, again, I don't know what's going to happen with the cap space with the potential, increase. But if we're looking at around 31 million negative with the increase in the cap, then we have a $36 million savings. We're looking at a +5 before doing any restructuring. Obviously, guys are going to get restructured to help us out more in cap space. So I get it a lot on Twitter when, there was a tweet where they talked about Ayuk and who was it? It was Ayuk, it was Kittle, and it was someone else. They weren't going to be able to pay all 3, so one of them might be the odd man out. And I'm like, well, I'm going to Miami because Mike McDaniel loves those guys. And someone's like, we have no money. And I'm like, don't worry about that, man. Don't worry about that. So there's that. Then you have the Christian Wilkins trade possibility. And that's why I'm talking about this one, because there's a cut trade. Tomorrow I'll talk about more about his I'll do a whole video on just Christian Wilkins and the whole situation there, but there is a possibility that they tag trade him, because obviously from what I'm hearing, he is a priority. He is, from what I'm hearing, and again, take this with a grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. I have no inside sources. I just have my ear to the what is the saying? Comment below. It's like the ear to the limestone. I don't even think it's that, but I just look dumb as hell. But I'm hearing things. I'm hearing things from people who do have sources, and I start to listen. I'm that person that sits there and listens to everyone talk and just writes things down. Oh, you think that? Oh, you think that? And I kind of see where the puzzle pieces match. From what I'm hearing, getting Christian Wilkins decided is more important to them than Tua. Not saying Tua isn't as important, but kind of the whole Christian Wilkins thing is more important because it's more of a dire need. Like, can they figure out what they're going to do with Wilkins? And if he is not going to budge or come close, then they'll move to the Tua contract and all that stuff. But if the Dolphins can tag and trade him, and if the Dolphins can get a first for Christian Wilkins, which is a possibility, Christian Wilkins is a very good defensive tackle. He showed us, and again, last year, if you guys remember, I talked about the guys who were making top money, and I talked about their sack total. It's like Christian Wilkins was listening to me. He was like, all right, boom, I got 9 sacks. My tackles weren't up there, but I focused on the one part of my game that people thought I was lacking, and I got the sacks. If the Dolphins get a first for him, I think you get a first and a third, or like a first and a fourth. Like, I'm just running because he helps the defense out so much, especially in the run game. He's a torment on certain, quarterbacks. But if and again, this is about them not being able to come to some type of, middle ground when it comes to the money. And the Dolphins were like, well, we're not going to get nothing for him. Tag and trade. And if you can get a first and a third or first and a fourth, I would do that. I would do that in a heartbeat. Now, is he worth that? Some people will do a trade so they don't have to get outbid in free agency. And that's a thing that people underestimate. Why would they trade for him if he's just a free agent? Because of that. If you could trade for some guy and you have all the rights to give him the contract that you deem fair versus let him hit free agency and you're in a bidding war with 4 teams, and that number that he's wanting goes up and up because 4 teams want him, it's easier just to trade for. I'm going to trade for him, and then we'll deal with him. It's like what the Browns did with Jarvis Landry. They just traded for him, and they gave him the $60 million contract. We'll deal with it ourselves instead of potentially other teams bidding for him, and it gets to $18 million. You know what I'm saying? But overall, we could save about $36 million, 18 and a half post-June with Xavien Howard. And the possibilities, there are 2 trade possibilities with Raheem Mostert and Christian Wilkins. Cedric Wilson is voided. He's not on the team anymore. And when you look at the team, I don't see any other possible cuts or trades happening. I'm like looking at it right now. Yeah, no. Because you look at the bottom end of it, no, like these guys are barely making any money. When you look at like, these barely make any money, but like I made it another video that you should sign them now, like the Jalen Phillips and the Javon Holland and the Jalen Waddle. We should sign them now. Possibly even, you know, their cap hits are minuscule. Jalen Phillips is at $4.4 million. Lower it. Give him a lot of money on the back end of his contract because we expect him to be here forever. But comment below. Is there a guy that I didn't say you'd want to cut? Is there a guy that I said you possibly could be cut that you don't want to cut? And what is your thoughts? Like if, and again, I'm not saying that he's worth it, but if the Dolphins get a call for Christian Wilkins, they'll give a first and a third. Are you saying no to that? What would you want for Christian Wilkins realistically? And would you trade him, or would you just tag him and make him play on the tag? Because you know, would he play on the tag? And would you trade Raheem Mostert, or would you ride with him another year, even at the age of 32? Comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, we are in the start of free agency, and I got a ton of videos for you guys. So, without further ado, I will see you in the next one. But like usual, stay classy. FN top.